Hey folks, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm doing a wrap up of all the books that I read during May, giving you some little reviews about it and also directing you to single reviews that I've already done or perhaps reading vlogs as well, as I did quite a few reading vlogs over the last couple of weeks and I'm still currently filming one now. So let's get started. The first book I'm actually going to direct you to a video that I've already got out, and that is for The Art of Prophecy by Wesley Chu. I was on a book tour for this, so the publishers and the press for the book tour sent me a physical copy, which was amazing, as well as a digital copy, and I talked about that all over on Instagram, which is at HardcoreCupcakeHailstorm, and it's always linked in the description, as well as doing a review a little bit later on the YouTube channel as well. So if you'd like any more thoughts about that, feel free to check out the dedicated videos and content over on my Instagram. But just to give you a quick overview of what it's about, what you can expect, we are following what is essentially a broken prophecy which throws an unexpected cast of characters into each other's path in an attempt to seek the truth, save lives and bring justice. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, definitely give the other videos and other content a little look. So the next book I read was also for a book tour, and this was for the Henry Roy PR book tour, and this is for the book Lunacy by Chris Koppel. I received a e-arc for this from the Henry Roy PR team, so thank you very much to them. Again, as usual, as with everything, all my thoughts were 100% my own. Obviously, I'd like to acknowledge, as I always do, it's the right thing to do, that I received a digital book for this, as well as participating in the book tour. So we are following Mike and Lisa, who assumed that buying a new build meant that nobody else had ever lived there. They were dead wrong. And thus begins a sort of haunted house story, which I would say is more of a thriller, a psychological thriller, rather than horror. Are you right behind me, Elsa? Just walked up and gone right behind me, settled down nicely, bless her. Hey, you want to be next to mummy? We'll just go. I am very much on the edge of the sea. I didn't realise I was to begin with, but she's made that very clear. So for Lunacy, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I appreciated that both Mike and Lisa went through this supernatural experience together, rather than, you know, the classical trope of blaming it on the woman having a hysterical breakdown. We kind of had a bit of a role reversal, but also them going through it together. So we had Mike, who was getting a lot of stress at work, so a lot of it was based on, am I just having a stressful time, am I having a breakdown? But they were very supportive of each other, and it didn't go down the hysteria route, it didn't go down like the you're completely, you know, crazy route. They sort of worked on it together and tried to think logically about it. They also have a young son in the home as well, so that was something that they tried to navigate in a way that would least affect the child, and I really enjoyed seeing like that family perspective within this supernatural experience, you know. This character called Kerry absolutely infuriated me. She just got right on my nerves, and I couldn't understand why they didn't have this sort of, you know, team to stop this sort of work toxicity from happening. I was a bit shocked that Samantha was a cat. I feel like it should have had a bit more elaboration on who Samantha was, because every now and then, especially in the beginning, she'd randomly pop up and I'm like, who's Samantha? I mean, such a human name. I was not expecting it to be the family animal. I would have loved more details on why the house was acting the way it was earlier on, because I think it would have made for more of a smoother development of story and plot. But overall, this had some great tension and atmosphere building, and I really enjoyed like the character focus being the kind of main aspect of the story. I do have a bit more of a detailed review over on Instagram. As I said, I was a part of the book tour, and that's where I posted the content over on Instagram. I do have a couple of quotes, and I shall read one of those. But once you've invited a vampire into your home, there's no way to get rid of them until they've sucked you dry. Next up, I did a little bit of blended reading. I read the audio and the ebook for Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke, which was read by Simon Prebble, and oh my gosh, I've been meaning to read this for so long. I was kind of on and off whether I wanted to or not. I had read Piranesi some time before, and I was not super blown away with the story of that. So because Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell was such a behemoth of the book, it put me off even more so, thinking, am I going to have the similar feelings of this writing style, of this storytelling, in a longer time period am I going to be able to finish it, but I'm so glad I ended up doing it in the end. I actually got the push from one of my friends who loaned me his book, but the book was so paper thin and the writing was so tiny that I knew I wouldn't be able to read it in that format, so I gave it back to him, and I decided to listen to it on Audible and borrow it from my BorrowBox Libby app for the digital version. So for those of you who don't know, Stranger Norrell is about English magician, and in this world it's kind of like Victorian era, I would say. English magicians were once the wonder of the known world, but by the 1800s their powers have diminished entirely and they've long since been able to perform any kind of substantial magic. Stranger Norrell attempt to bring it back to the country and to be the top of their game in London and also worldwide, and that's kind of the basic root of the story, but there's so much depth and detail to it. Yeah, it was amazing. I'm still thinking to do a full dedicated review for this because I had so many thoughts going on. Just for now, I'll do a basic whiz through, just something to give you a taste of what's to come, I guess. So I gave this a 4.5 stars out of 5 stars, and I found this to be a thorough, detailed novel with an enchanting and logical exploration of magic in Victorian England. It was a fantastic beast of a book, and I am definitely glad to have finally have read it. I did go on and try and watch the TV show. I was pretty sure it was on BBC. I thought it was their production, but I went on BBC iPlayer and I couldn't find it, and I think they must have removed it. But apparently it's now on the BritBox app, so I'm going to see if I can get like a free trial just to watch it and see what's on there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to checking out the TV show, because apparently that was quite a good reimagining of the book. Alright, once I finished that, I picked up another audiobook, and this is the final in a trilogy, and this is The Fate of the Tearling by Erica Johansson, and it was read by Polly Lee. So this one is of course the final of the trilogy, so I won't be giving too much away than you would get from the synopsis, and then just some basic thoughts that doesn't really go into depth so I don't spoil you. So the synopsis of this one is to head off invasion by the Red Queen, Queen of the Tearling Kelsey Glynn surrendered and named her head guard regent in her place. Now her fate and that of the Tearling will be revealed. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. So despite not managing to hold on to the smaller details of book 2 and not properly listening, I would say, this was still a really entertaining read. I went in knowing I'd be unsatisfied by the ending because I did have such an up and down kind of strange relationship with the first 2 books. So I wasn't surprised by that being the case. I feel like I aligned better with Kelsey again. She kind of came back to herself, to the version of her that I preferred, that I agreed with, and I think the 2 timelines in this particular installment of the trilogy worked way better in the conclusion than it did throughout the rest of the books. I think the end was a bit of a cop-out though, and you know, as predicted, I was left unsatisfied. But that's another series that I can tick off of my read list, and also one that was highly acclaimed back in like 2016 or so, 2014, 2016, and originally it was part of my reading vlog where I was picking up books and series that I should have read back then. So yeah, that's why I originally picked up this series. So glad to have finished it in quite a quick succession. I think I read it over like 2 months. Okay, so another book, well, another string of books really that I have already included in reading vlogs, so I'll just point you to them and give you a little bit of information about what they're about, is The Serpent Shadow, the graphic novel by Rick Riordan, and it was adapted by Orpheus Collar. This is the 3rd and final installment in the Kane Chronicles. I wanted to revisit this series, but in the form of a graphic novel when I picked them up, whenever I did, but for some reason I didn't get to the 3rd book when I read the other 2 back to back, so this was a good time to finish it off and include it in the reading vlog. So just a quick whiz through of what it's about. Despite their best efforts, Carter and Sadie Kane can't keep the Chaos Snake down. Nothing less in the mortal world is at stake when the Kanes fulfill its destiny. So as I say, this is the final in a trilogy. Yeah, great stuff, really enjoyed this. Also in that same vlog, potentially, it might have been a different vlog, but I will link them around for you guys. If I run out of card space, I'll pop them in the description. But I finally picked up The Witches. The story is by Scott Snyder. So I actually hoped this was going to be like a volume 1, volume 2, yada yada yada. It even says volume 1, but they haven't got back to it for some reason. I talk a little bit more about that in that reading vlog. The synopsis for this one says, when the Rooks family moves to a remote town to escape a haunting trauma, they're hopeful of starting over, but evil is waiting for them in the woods. And that's what I'll leave it there for. You can check out the reading vlog if you are interested. I picked up another audiobook, and this was The Bridge Kingdom. This was book 1 in a series of like romantasy, new adult I would say. This is by Danielle L. Jensen, and it was narrated by Lauren Fatang and James Patrick Cronin. So in this series, the blurb states, what if you fell in love with the one person you'd sworn to destroy? Married to the enemy for peace, Lara is tasked to sneak and seduce her way through their defences to bring the enemy down from the inside. I quite enjoyed this one. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. It was a fun and quick read for sure. It definitely focused more on the romance side of things rather than the fantasy, but I did really enjoy the enemies to lovers tropes, as well as the marriage of convenience trope, which I didn't think I would, but I surprised myself, I guess. I also enjoyed the depth to the political intrigue that we had in this story. It was a lot to kind of digest and get into, so I was appreciative of that. I wasn't 100% focused on this story all the way through, but I definitely enjoyed what I did kind of digest properly, and I was intrigued enough to head straight into the sequel, which I'll talk about after another book. So I also did another reading vlog. This one was for Witches and Wizards, and this was like the main focus of that reading vlog. It's Spells for Forgetting by Adrian Young, and I did it as a buddy read as well with Sharon Joy reading, and it was such a great buddy read. Really enjoyed it. So again, all the thoughts and everything like that is in that reading vlog, but just for a little synopsis, we're following 4 friends when everything changed after the orchard fire and death of Lily, one of the 4 friends. A mystery needs to be solved, names need to be cleared, may even be a chance for love again. So yeah, want any more details on that, of course head to the reading vlog. Oh, I did have some quotes for that one actually, so I will pick one. This is about like the landscape a little bit, and about one of the only kind of newer buildings, one of the newer houses on this island, which is called Sersha, which is a beautiful name. How everything kind of looks old and weathered, and this new building is even starting to kind of be consumed by the nature. So the quote says, but the rain and snow had begun to paint its exterior into Sersha's landscape, as if it had always existed there. The island had a way of doing that, claiming things for her own. I just thought that was so beautiful, and the way they spoke of the island as if it was like personified, you know. So back to the Bridge Kingdom series, this second book in it. I think it's a duology. I think there's 2 sets of duologies, and the 4th book in the overall series is coming out really soon. So very exciting stuff. But anyway, this is the second book in this series, in this universe, and it's called The Traitor Queen. It's narrated by the same people. So in this one, we are following the Queen now in exile as a traitor. Lara has watched Ithacania be conquered by her own father. But when she learns Aaron has been captured, Lara knows there is only one reason he is being kept alive, as bait for his traitorous daughter. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I found it super entertaining. I was able to feel so much more invested in our main characters, and despite again not fully 100% listening to it in book 1 and in this one, I still had the urge to know what was happening, kind of stay glued to it. I was going to say glued to the screen, but I wasn't watching anything, but I had that desire more to be more sort of invested in the storyline. I found that I did keep stopping what I was doing more frequently this time around whilst listening to this audiobook, which was probably bad because I was working, and that's why I wasn't really 100% paying attention every time. But this definitely captured me enough to be like, oh wait, I need to get back to work, you know what I mean? Yeah, it was definitely a fun listen. I'm glad that I chose to listen to these books rather than read them, because I'm still just enjoying the experience. After that, I read a e-arc that was from Book Sirens, and this is Medusa by BJ Irons. It is a gay retelling of Medusa, and it's part of the mythology retelling from a gay gaze. So the whole series is called Mythology Gay, which I absolutely love. Count how many times I said gay just then, I love it. This is a reimagining of the Medusa myth, and I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed this so much more than I expected, and that's not even trying to be like a backhanded compliment or anything like that. I just went into this knowing it was going to be heavy on the romance, and despite the month of books focusing a lot on romance, it's not typically a genre I go into. And I was also worried about how it would make me feel, because I love mythology and I think Medusa is one of my favourite stories, so I was worried that it wouldn't do justice to her story. But I really did enjoy it, and I actually thought the romance was super heartbreaking and spicy, and I actually could have done with more spice, which is not what I was expecting. It was a gorgeous story about boyhood, coming of age and a gay awakening, and it was so fantastically told. Initially I wasn't sure about changing Medusa to Meduso, but Irons crafted a really beautiful story whilst paying respect and homage to the original legend, which is what I was originally worried about, so it was done really well, I think. So I'm looking forward to continuing on with the Mythology series. Next up, I listened to another audiobook, and that was Sadie by Courtney Summers, read by a full cast. This is one that I've been wanting to read for the longest time, and I actually think when I got Audible it was really because of this book, and I'm pretty sure it's the first book I added to my wish list and downloaded, but then I didn't read it. I don't know why, I don't know what happened, but we got there in the end and it was a 5-star read for me. So Sadie basically explores the depth of a sister's love when she hunts for the killer of her little sister, and it's kind of told in this podcast kind of way. The podcast channel has picked up the story of Sadie running away to try and find out, you know, the truth about what happened to her sister and get revenge, and they're basically like telling the story as it goes, as a true crime kind of situation, but not knowing really the outcome of what's happened, like what's happened. But we're also getting perspectives from Sadie directly, which is helpful, so you're not kept entirely in the dark. Thought production wise it was fantastic, storytelling genius, and it left me with a melancholy and heartache that I just couldn't get over straight away, like it hurt. But yeah, it was a beautiful book, and I'm so glad that I did end up listening to it. So many people were saying listen to it rather than read it, because the podcast narration really pops, and I've got to 100% agree with that, especially being a full cast. Okay, so the second to last book is Fractal Noise by Christopher Polini. I got this sent to me from the PR team, again as part of the UK book tour. I posted my thoughts on my Instagram again on the 30th of May, and I put up a YouTube video as well on the 31st of May. So if you're interested again in more depth, a full review, check out both of those outlets. But just to kind of give you an idea of what this story is about, it's a tense journey into the unknown on an alien planet. A small group of scientists will experience first contact, a discovery as terrifying as it is exhilarating. And it is the prequel yet standalone to Sleep in a Sea of Stars, which came out a couple of years ago. So yeah, it's like sci-fi, horror, thriller, a study on grief, so much in here. And as I say, I have a full review for you to review if you would like to, or you can read the review on Instagram, Goodreads Storygraph. I have a lot of quotes for this book, so I will randomly pick one, trying to make it a different one to the one that I did in the video. Oh, this one, it felt so like true to how I feel being a migraine sufferer. He still seemed to be in pain, and he had the pinched look of a migraine sufferer. I get that pinched look, like you are, everything kind of just focuses in and you look kind of like spiteful because you're in so much pain and everything's just like so heightened. So that was like, damn, yeah, that's the exact explanation of migraine facial features, you know. And the last book that I listened to / read in May was These Witches Don't Burn, which is the first in, I think it's a trilogy, by Isabel Sterling, narrated by Kristen DiMercurio. So this one follows Hannah, who's an elemental, and witches live in secret but in the most renowned place for them, which is Salem. The works of a blood witch cause fear to rise in the community. Alongside navigating life with her toxic ex, they have to be quite close encounters due to them being in the same coven, and rising interest in the new girl Morgan. Hannah has a lot to deal with. So I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars overall. I loved learning about the 3 factions of witchcraft in particular, and how they felt about one group specifically, that group being the Blood Witches. The queer rep was beautiful to read about, and I loved how honest the writing felt. It was, absolutely delightful. It felt fast paced for the most part, which definitely worked for this type of plot, I would say. It didn't feel like super too quick. There were times where I had to kind of go back a little bit and kind of ground myself again and be like, oh, okay, that's what happened, let's continue on. But generally, for the most part, it really worked. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading the sequel, and I've got that on my wish list. I'm probably going to download that next month's Audible credit, with next month's Audible credit. And the quote I have for this one is, "I'm standing here telling you how you hurt me and you can't hear it. You broke my heart and you didn't even know it. How can I ever trust you to put the pieces back together?" We've all had that first heartbreak, and damn, was that the line, was that the quote that really incompensates it? So that is, my friends, the end of this video. Those are all the reviews for all the books that I read in May. Let me know if you've read any of these, what you've read during the month, what your favourite book was. I would love to know. But for now, I shall speak to you in another video soon. Bye!